super excited about this event, and thank you so much for being a part of this event today. I also have Christine Wells from London School of Business, whom I'm going to be introducing in a while. While we just wait for a couple more seconds for more people to trickle in, it would be a good idea if you could tell us which city you're from, and also if you have any burning questions, please put it on the Q&A box, and we will take it up once the presentation is over. Okay, so let's get started. What do you say, Christine?
Yeah, let's do it.
Great. This is about us, the Red Pen. We've been in the space of education consulting for over 14 plus years. We cover an array of business lines, which includes boarding school, undergrad preparation, undergrad admissions, postgrad admissions, MBA admissions. And within MBA admissions, we have a seasoned group of consultants who've helped clients crack top business schools across Europe and US. We are also members of prestigious international bodies such as NAGAC and AGAC. And we have 100+ team member across the different service lines coming from 9 different nationalities. I am Gunjan Jhunjhunwala. I'm a senior MBA consultant at the Red Pen. In my 13+ years of professional experience, I've pivoted different functions, different roles. I've had a taste of corporate at Google. I have done 2 of my own startups. It's absolutely fulfilling to do what I do at the Red Pen, because it's so amazing to see when clients make it to their dream colleges and are able to uplift the quality of their lives as well as those associated with them via education. Today, I have with me Christine Wells. She is a senior global recruitment manager, MBA and MIF at London Business School. She's been in the space of higher education for 7 years. She started her career at MIF admissions team at LBS. She spent about a year there, then moved to an operations role within MBA admissions and recruitment. For the last 2 years, she's been looking after global recruitment for MBA and MIF programs. She and her team manages prospective candidates who are interested at doing their education and furthering their education at LBS. So thank you so much, Christine, for taking out the time and being here as a part of this. So without much ado, it's over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Delighted to be here. Thanks for having me. We're just gonna change over sharing screens. So yes. Bear with us on that. Hopefully you can all see. I guess if you can't, just let us know. I think we've only got the Q&A box live, so just let us know if you can't see anything. But thank you so much for that intro, Gunjan. Great to be here, and delighted to be kind of walking you through a short presentation for the next 20 minutes or so, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions after that. So just to give you a little bit of overview into what we will cover, we're going to cover off kind of an introduction to LBS itself. We'll have a little bit of focus on the MBA in particular. So I'm going to intro some of our other programs just in case you might be interested in, but really this session is going to be focused on the full-time 15 to 21 month MBA program. I'll give you an overview of the admissions process, give you a little bit of advice there. And then, like I said, we're going to have so much time for questions. So please make sure you're popping those in the Q&A box. I think we're actually going to try and look at our most popular questions. So if you see a question already in there, give it a little thumbs up, and Gunjan's going to be moderating for us later, and we'll be able to kind of find the more popular questions for us. Okay, so let's just get into it. Let's talk about LBS, who we are, what we do. So we are fully postgraduate education in business. We have about 12 degree programs now, and they span all sorts of career ages. I'm not going to talk too much about that because I've got a slide on that next. But we have about 2,500 students on our campus at any one time. In terms of our faculty, we have some world-class faculty at LBS, about 150 from 30 different countries. And what's really great about LBS faculty is they have a commitment to research publishing when they're actually on campus. So they're making sure that they're weaving in their research into those cutting edge and up-to-date business cases that you'll study. Our lectures are very almost like conversational. I've sat in on a few classes now, and you're very much expected to kind of do reading beforehand, bring your insights into the classroom, be prepared to kind of give some insights and answers to questions. So it's a lot more like a dialogue rather than kind of being spoken at the whole time. In terms of our peer group, I mentioned, anything from about 2,500 students on campus at any given time. They're from 100+ different countries. Most of our classes are hitting that 90% mark in terms of international cohorts. And then in terms of our alumni community, obviously all these people then graduate and they join the alumni community. We have over 53,000 alumni now, and they're based in well over 150+ different countries. So no matter where you are in the globe, you're going to find an LBS alumni. And then in terms of kind of, LBS, we can't really talk about LBS without talking about London. It's in our name. And we really try and harness the power of London, not only as a global city, but also as a city of business, of culture. We've got a buzzing financial district. We really try and make London as much of the classroom as we possibly can. And I'll show you some ways that we end up doing that. And then, a lot of what we do around LBS is underpinned by our global mindset. We want to create global leaders of the future. We want to be global in everything we do, because that's ultimately where the world is going. We're becoming a lot more globalized. So we want to make sure that people are kind of able to adapt to that as the future goes on. All right, so as promised, just to give you an overview of our programs that we have so far. So if you are on the call and you don't have work experience yet, or you're under that 2-year mark, you're probably looking more at our graduate master's programs. So that's the Masters in Management, the Global Masters in Management, Masters in Financial Analysis, and Masters in Analytics and Management. The MBA and the Masters in Finance kind of sit within that 2 to 13-year experience bucket. Our new 1-year MBA, which I will talk about a little bit more in a little bit, that kind of sits within a 3 to 10-year bracket. Yet to add this to this slide, so apologies for not doing that for this call, but just so you've got insights there. And our executive programs and the Sloan Masters in Leadership and Strategy are really designed for people who already have 8 years of management experience. Some of the members of our Sloan program have almost 20 to 30 years of experience. So they're really pushing for those C-suite level roles there. But just so you can kind of see how we manage our programs, how much years experience you'll need for all of them. So as I mentioned, most of the focus today is going to be on our full-time 2-year program, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight into our new 1-year MBA. So you may have heard a little bit about it. So I'm going to put this slide up with a little bit of comparison between the two programs. So obviously our 2-year MBA is on the left, and you can see kind of how we're building that class. In terms of the 1-year MBA, it's going to be 11 months. It's going to be a very intense 11 months. We require candidates to have the prerequisite of a Master's in Management or equivalent, and it must be from an accredited institution from either EQUIS or AACSB. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a smaller class. It's going to be about 50 students. And like I mentioned, the experience range is going to be expected to be about 3 to 10 years. So yeah, just to give you insight there. If you had any questions on that, please pop them in the Q&A. I'm more than happy to answer some of those, especially if you think you're eligible. Right, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the 2-year MBA and the full-time MBA in terms of how we build a class. So what do we look for? Typically, we are looking for around 425 students in a class. Apologies, the slide before had a slightly different number. We're set on 425 for the next couple of years. Like I mentioned, about 90% international. This year, we've actually been 94% international, so kind of very heavily international. We've had, 60 plus unique nationalities in a class. One year, we actually got 70 plus nationalities, unique nationalities. So we're always striving to kind of, have that international nature to the class. Years of work experience has a real range, anything from 2 years up to about 13 years. Average does tend to hover around 5 to 6 year on year. We have a high percentage of women in the class. So this year we're actually 43%. 40 is our, it's almost the minimum of what we want. We're really striving to get up to that 50%. We want to keep working hard to make sure that we've got gender parity in the MBA class, and we're making some really good headway in terms of achieving that. And then I've just popped in what our typical GMAT range has been over the last few years. So 600 to 770 if you have taken GMAT in the 10th edition. Of course, hopefully you all know that GMAT has shifted now to the GMAT Focus. And I've just put the rough equivalent of what that range would be. So 555 to 755 in the new GMAT Focus test. Hopefully that gives you kind of an insight into kind of how we build a class. What I should say is that we look for all sorts of different profiles when it comes to building the MBA class. So we want as much diversity, not only from the nationality standpoint, but also from the sector you've been in. So if you have been in consulting or finance, maybe healthcare, retail, military, aerospace, we've had lawyers on the program, engineers, tech, entrepreneurs, you name it, it's in the class. So we'll look at work experience from any background. So hopefully that helps you there if you're thinking, oh, I'm not in finance or consulting. We look at anything. And then just to give you kind of an overview of the MBA itself. So as we go along, you'll see that one of the key features of the MBA is flexibility and being able to customize the MBA. We actually start the program before students even join us on campus. They'll have to do online pre-work. So that's in accounting, data analytics, and finance. It's designed to get everyone up to a level playing field. So as I mentioned, we look at all sorts of different profiles. Not everyone will be as well versed in accounting, for example. So we want to make sure that we're giving people that base knowledge and they can really hit the ground running when they join us on campus. Apologies. The QR code there will take you to the brochure. I recommend downloading that. It's got a lot more information in. I'm just going to cover the basics with you today. The first term, when you start the program, is very structured. Everyone's doing the same thing. Those business fundamental core classes. But the program can be flexible and customized as soon as you start term 2 of the first year. So that's where we kind of go into our tailored core courses. You'll start picking what you're interested in, maybe pick classes that are better suited for perhaps your career goal outcomes. You can also start putting in electives into the first year. So you can take up to 5 electives in the first year. And that really helps the people who are looking to finish a bit earlier, which we'll definitely touch on right at the end of this slide. There's another great opportunity from term 2 of the first year, which is our language classes. So we partner with King's College London to deliver these. There are 9 different languages to choose from at 5 different levels. So great opportunity to kind of enhance your language skills, maybe learn your 3rd or 4th language, who knows? But yeah, just a really great chance to kind of round out a little bit more of your kind of soft skills, social skills, especially if you're looking to work abroad in the future. Then in terms of the summer break between the 2 years, so a lot of people end up doing internships, and they might use them to explore a new industry or perhaps accelerate their career in their current industry. But it's a great chance for exploration, try new things out and see what might work for you. And of course, the beauty of a 2-year program is if you did an internship, but perhaps you weren't that sure about it, you got a whole year to explore other avenues. The other option for our summer break is the entrepreneurship summer school. So this is really great if you're a budding entrepreneur and you've got a business idea that you want to test out. You actually get partnered with alumni. So it's a mix of faculty and alumni mentors as part of the summer school. So a great chance to kind of engage with the wider LBS network, but B, really great chance to kind of rigorously test out your business idea, see how entrepreneurial minded you are. In terms of the second year is completely flexible and customizable. You have a choice of over 100 electives, which is a pretty whopping great big choice if you ask me. And students will do roughly 9 to 11 across the 2 years. Electives have a choice of being in a different format. So again, it's really about flexibility in the second year. You can choose your electives to be that regular format of a class a week for a given number of weeks. It could be that you even choose them to be in block weeks. So some electives you can start on a Monday, finish on a Friday, and that's your elective credit gained. So really great way of kind of freeing up time later in your timetable. A lot of people do this to be able to do part-time internships later on in the second year. So yeah, just a great way to increase your flexibility. In terms of other options you can do in your second year, so we do run an international exchange program. We've got about 30 partner schools worldwide, a lot in North America, such as Columbia, Kellogg, Wharton, NYU, MIT, but we've got some further afield, so quite a few in Europe, IE, ESA, Bocconi. We've got some out in Asia, such as Tsinghua in China, HKU in Hong Kong. We've got Melbourne in Australia, Gibbs in South Africa. So you really are spoilt for choice when it comes to international exchange, and you know those kind of vary in length. So a lot of it are a semester, some might be half a semester. So again, just really encouraging that flexibility. Another option in the second year is the global experience. I have a full slide on that in just a minute, so I'll save it for then. But really to talk about exit points. So whilst we are a 2-year program by nature, there is opportunity to finish early if you would like to. So we have an exit point of 15 months, 18 months, and then the full duration is 21. We really only get a handful of people finish at 15 months, and up to 20 to 30% of the class will have finished by 18 months. You can change your mind as you go along. So if you were eyeing up that 15-month exit but wanted to extend, that's obviously a lot easier than trying to contract. It's worth saying there's some pros and cons with all the exit points. Some of the pros of finishing early are obviously getting back into the working world, but it does mean that you would limit which global experience you could do, and it would pretty much rule out your international exchange. So just a few things to think about there when you're thinking about exit points. So maybe just to finish off kind of program content with a couple of highlight slides. So London CAP is definitely, I think, one of the highlights for the students that end up choosing to do it. It is our 10-week consulting project. It runs over term 2 and 3 of the first year, sits within that tailored core list of classes. So what happens? Students get put into teams of about 5 to 6. They get partnered with a client, and you're working on a real current challenge of strategic importance for them. So very much applied work. It is not theoretical. It's you know, something that company is going through right now. You get partnered with faculty, so you're a great chance to again work really closely with faculty. We have about a choice of about 30 to 40 different projects across 5 different sectors. So there's plenty to choose from. And this is really just to give you some of the companies that we've worked with this year and give you a little bit of a highlights reel of who we're working with, what they do. And there's some really interesting projects that the current class have ended up doing. Then another highlight is definitely the global experience. So in your second year of the MBA, you'll get a chance to go on a global experience. They are week-long immersion courses, and really a chance to see how business is done in a city that you may never even been to, let alone have the chance to work in or study in. You can only choose one, unfortunately. There are 15 to choose from. So this is very much just a snapshot of what's on offer. But the weeks give you a chance to engage with companies in the region, work on group projects with your classmates, engage with alumni in that region. Some have a little bit more of a practical consulting element to them. So it really depends on which one you're thinking about as to what activities you end up doing. Like I said, this slide is really just to give you a flavour of some of the destinations that we have. We do try and update this and add new destinations every single year. And then finally, just to tie off, I wanted to talk a little bit about the students. We cannot talk about LBS, of course, without our amazing students. So they are very active, very engaged with their community. We have 80 plus student clubs on campus now, and they run a whopping, 1,000 plus events every single year. Anything from speaker series, networking nights, mentorship programs, treks, student-led conferences. We've got it all. There is an event pretty much every single day. It is really hard to be bored at LBS. There's lots and lots going on, and lots of really great opportunities as part of these student clubs. So did just want to highlight that before I go a little bit more into the admissions side of things. Okay. So before I kind of crack into the elements of an application, what we look for, I really wanted to encourage a little bit of time about self-reflection. Applying to business schools should really be all about self-reflection. It should be understanding, what are your motivations for applying to business school? Why is now a good time in your career? Why is LBS a good school for you? Why are you a good fit for LBS? How long will it take you to prepare the application? So there's a lot of things to think about with business school. It's a really big, investment, even at the point of application. So it's really important that you're taking that time to understand, are you ready to apply now? Is now a good time? So I really encourage you to do that as we move through the admissions requirements of my slides. I often get asked, oh, Kirsten, your class is so diverse and so international. What are you actually looking for? And if we could boil it down into 3 themes, I think these are really it. So the first theme that we see across all of our candidates is academic capacity. We're a rigorous business school program. Some parts of the MBA are particularly intense, and we want to make sure that we're setting candidates up to succeed on our program. We're not in the business of setting people up to fail. So we really want to see that capacity for academics. So we'll get an idea of that through your previous transcripts, through your GRE, GMAT score. So that will give us some good indication there. The next piece in terms of themes that we look for is around leadership potential. So it doesn't mean that you already have had to have managed teams. It's not a prerequisite for you to have already been doing that, but it's more around the leadership potential in the future. So if you have been managing teams, awesome. Tell us about it. We'd love to hear about it. But if you have not, maybe some ways that you can show this, any extracurriculars that you're doing, professional networks that you're part of is a really good sign. Even things like sports teams, it's a really good indicator of how you work in a team, how you lead others if you're in a leadership role. So all good things to include. And then finally, I talked about it right at the start. It's something that underpins everything we do at LBS. It's that global mindset. So again, kind of similar to that leadership potential piece. If you have lived and worked abroad, amazing. Would love to hear about it, but don't worry if you haven't. We don't require our candidates to have already had international experience. It's more around that potential in the future. And do you want to have a global network? Would you like to work internationally in the future? Do you see yourself in a class full of different nationalities, and how are you going to adapt to that? So it's definitely way more about the potential in the future and wanting to have that global mindset in the future, and also just being open and curious and wanting to learn from your classmates as much as you do from the faculty. So if I could sum up themes that are kind of have a thread across all of our candidates and our students, those are definitely them. So as promised, I wanted to break down the application into its requirements, but it's really important for me to say we take a very holistic approach to reviewing. So even though they're all the pieces separated out, I really encourage you to think of them a bit more like a jigsaw puzzle. So Each of these pieces are really important, but it's only when they're all put together that we see the full picture of a candidate. So no one part is weighted a little bit more than the others. It all comes together kind of as a full review piece. So the first section is our online application form. I should also include the one-page CV in that, so do make sure your CV is one page. Advice for the CV, keep it quite achievements-based, use the application form to then give us some extra colour in terms of your day-to-day responsibilities. Don't underestimate the length of the application form. Appreciate you'll be potentially looking at a few different business schools. Do make sure you understand how long their applications forms are, how long it might take to answer your questions. There is also a great question in there about your free time and your hobbies. Personally, it's one of my favorite questions of the application form, just because I get to find out a little bit more about the candidates outside of work. And I think it's just such an interesting question, mostly to find out what interesting hobbies people have around the world. Next up is the reference. So we actually only require one reference. We do advise that it's from a professional setting. So for some people, that might be a line manager, might be a really good person. Our general advice is pick somebody that knows you really well. So can attest to things like how you work in a team, how you handle pressure, what your leadership potential is, what your strengths and weaknesses are. It's no good asking someone, very senior in your company if they have no idea who you are. So do make sure it's someone who knows you pretty well. For those of you who might not tell your company, or perhaps you're working at a family business, a client is totally fine in that case, or a peer or colleague in the company that you trust. For those in the family businesses, though, I'd say just make sure it's not a family member for that one if you can't ask a client. Moving into the essays. So really my big piece of advice with the essays is use your authentic voice, really use them to tell us about you and tell us your story. The eagle-eyed of you who've been on our website might have seen that we have a new question this year. So we now have 3 essay questions. So the first question is very much all about career goals, how will LBS help you to achieve those? So that hopefully should be fairly self-explanatory. The second question is our new one. It is what makes you unique. I'm not going to give you too much advice on that one. I really encourage you to go away and have a think about it. For all our essay questions, there's no right or wrong answer. So I'm really intrigued to see what you come up with for that question in particular. Like I said, no right or wrong answer with that at all. And then the final question we have is our optional information question. You can use it for whatever you'd like. I recommend not using it to rehash what you've wrote in question 1 and 2. Think about if there's any additional information that can really provide extra clarity for the admissions committee. I've seen it used for all sorts of things. I've seen it used for those hobbies that people are really interested in. Maybe there's been an impactful volunteering or extracurricular experience you've had. I've seen people use it for quite personal reasons as well, bringing healthcare, anything like that. So there's a whole array of different optional essays out there. So really, give it a lot of thought. Think about what you would really like to write about that doesn't kind of rehash information you've already shared with us. And then moving on into the testing section of the application. So we do accept GRE or GMAT. We don't mind which one you have. I appreciate that there might be some people on the call who have 10th edition GMAT. So don't worry, if you've already got a GMAT score from the 10th edition, we're going to be accepting those right up until the point that they expire. For those of you still preparing to take the test, it's obviously going to be that GMAT Focus edition. Just to reiterate, we don't mind which one you do. It's very much a personal choice. If you're still in that preparation phase, try your hand at both tests. It's often a personal fit question as to which one you choose to do. I've already touched on the GMAT range in the class. Average has always hovered around 700 in the 10th edition scores year on year. For those of you still preparing, it roughly is a 700 is roughly equivalent to a 645. So just so you've got that. And then maybe just to touch on the testing, it links back to our holistic reviewing. It's just one part of the application. A high score won't guarantee admission, and a low score doesn't discount you automatically. It is just one piece of the puzzle, so it goes away and links to all the other parts of the application. It's worth saying, if you're aiming for round one, and I do have my slide with deadlines coming up, if you're aiming for round one, you need to be getting in that GMAT booked, GMAT jury booked as soon as possible. If you're not ready at this point, you might want to look at postponing to a round two application. And then last element is transcripts from your previous degrees. Please make sure these are translated into English if they're not already in English. And that's really all I have to say about that. And then my last few slides, I want to rattle through them fairly quickly, as I appreciate we want to make sure we've got lots of time for questions. Just to give you a journey of an application. So anybody who submits in a given round, all those applications go for review, and we'll communicate whether you've been shortlisted to interview or not. Our interviews are undertaken with alumni. So we have alumni all over the globe, as I mentioned. So you'll get a chance to meet with a member of the alumni community if you are shortlisted to interview. A lot of them are taking place face-to-face now, but we don't mind if interviews are virtual. We have a lot of interviewers across the globe, but do be aware that maybe there's an availability piece. So if you're not matched to an interviewer in India, for example, you may be matched with someone close by, neighboring country, and it might be that you have to do that virtually, but don't worry about that. We don't mind what format they're in. As part of the interview process, it's kind of a two-strand process. So if you are shortlisted to interview, you'll also be invited to submit our video questions. We use Kira Talent for that. We don't get a chance to meet everybody in person, so it's a great way to get a little bit more insight into who you are. Those video questions, one question you'll know in advance, you'll have time to prepare. The other one will come from a random bank of questions. So not designed to trip you up, but designed to see how you respond to that unprepared scenario, and gives us an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better as well. So when you've done the questions, you've done the interview feedback has come back, we take it back to the application, review it all again, and final decisions are communicated. Okay. My final slide before we hit off into questions, I wanted to give you the MBA 2027, and these will be the one-year MBA deadlines as well. So we'll have 3 rounds. First round's coming up in September. So like I said, if you're still preparing for that, you want to make sure you've got all the stuff in by the 6th. Round 2 will be on the 3rd of January. Round 3 will be a little bit later on in March next year, but just so you've got those, and these are live on our website, so don't worry if you don't catch them today, you can log into the website as well. And then I'll leave this up here as we start Q&A. We have a ton of events, both virtual, in person, on campus in London. We travel, so there's lots of chance to get to know us a little bit better, whether it is virtually or in person. So I'll leave that QR code up there for a bit. But Gunjan, I'll pass over to you, and I've seen some questions coming in.
Thank you so much, Christine, for that very, very comprehensive information about the school. I think a lot of questions would have gotten answered as you progressed, because you spoke extensively about the GMAT, you spoke about the global program, that LBS is about. But we could just go question by question and look at answering as many as we could. What do you suggest? Do we go about it?
No, that sounds good. Let's get into it.
Okay, so could you throw some light on the GMAT focus average? Well, I think you've already did that, 645 and 700.
Yeah, I'm happy to give a reminder. So I think it's GMAC who coined the term. The new 700 is 645. The range is about 555 to 755, I believe it is now. So hopefully that answers that one.
Right. In India, colleges arrange for placements. How does it happen over there? Is there any restrictions for working in US after the course? In UK after the course? How long will I get work permit?
Yeah, sure. I appreciate I didn't have time to necessarily cover our career centre. So in terms of internships, it's mostly self-sourced. So our career centre will post job roles, internships that they end up having passed through their desk, and it will be put on live onto the job board. But the reality is our career centre is not a matchmaking service. They're very much there to provide candidates with the tools and skills that you'll need for longevity in your career. But ultimately, it is up to you to apply and secure a role. They're on hand for a lot of coaching, a lot of different sector insights, that kind of thing. So that our career centre is really, really great at that. In terms of working in the UK after graduation, so at the minute, there is the opportunity for students who are on a student visa to transfer to what's called a graduate visa. That is 2 years to live and work in the UK on that graduate visa. It's tied to you as an individual as opposed to company sponsorship. I think with all things, particularly at the minute, we've just had a change of government. I should caveat that exists right now. I don't know what that will look like in 2 to 3 years' time. It might look a little different. It might change. So just so that that's what exists at the minute. Who knows what it might look like in the future.
Right. Okay, this one, what should be the focus of the what makes you unique essay? That is not already covered in the other essays.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question
It
to have
is.
as an addition. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I think it was, I think it's really about giving candidates an opportunity. I'll say the self-reflection piece again, to really understand who you are, and what is it about you that will, contribute to LBS, and what will you bring. So I think that is great for that. I'm a little bit hesitant to give any advice on what you should put in, because everyone has their own kind of unique standpoint, their own, what their own contributions could be based on, what your work experience has been, or what your upbringing has been like. So yeah, I'm a little hesitant to give too many ideas, but yeah, have a really good think about that one. It's a good one.
Right. How important is international work experience in an application? I think you addressed that, saying it's if you have it, it's great. Otherwise, you could show your potential through other mediums, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a question in the application form that
Yes.
is about international, your most impactful international experience. And I see people tackle that from different lenses. So whether it is, I work with international teams at work, even though I've never been outside of my country of origin. I have traveled a lot in my personal free time. I have had the chance to go abroad with my company. So there is space to kind of talk about that a little bit more. But yeah, you're totally right. It's not a prerequisite for us to have already worked internationally. Great if you have, but don't worry if you haven't.
Great. I think that's some good news and a relief for a lot of candidates here. How does the school view candidates with 8 years of experience? While I understand there's always the executive option, but my educational background is in design and preference would specifically be a full-time course.
Yeah, I think if you're a candidate who is hovering between a couple of our programs, I think there's a few things to think about. So I think one, between us and the executive MBA programs, our executive MBA programs are part-time. And I think that's one of the most important parts to think about, is if you're a person looking for a career transition, for example, our executive MBA might not lend too well to that, just because you're working full time, you're studying full time. It leaves very little space and capacity to be thinking about transitioning role. I'd also say it's about who you want to be studying with. So our MBA has a really big range of experiences and different career paths, whereas our executive MBA might be a bit more structured for the slightly older candidate. So that's something to think about. I would say don't worry, at 8 years, you're actually well within our range, but there's a couple of questions to go away and think about more in terms of a format of a program, and who you want to be in a class with.
Right. So 8 years, as as a number of years of experience, is he's okay to apply even for the full-time program,
Yeah,
right? Because
correct.
that's well
Yeah,
within the range of
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. So our range is 2 to
2 to
13.
8.
So
Okay, yeah, yeah.
13. So yeah.
Is LBS focused on students who wish to make a career in finance, capital
Mm.
investment management,
Yeah,
investment
that's a great
management?
question. I've often, I've often been approached and said, oh, maybe I don't fit LBS because it's a quote unquote finance school. And I think we've been trying to dispel the finance school myth for a while. So I guess if that question is coming up, it means it's working a little bit. But yes, absolutely. I think it definitely is. We have an amazing finance faculty who are rated very highly by students every year. We obviously have our designated finance specialist programs, such as the Masters in Finance, the MFA. And actually, if you are an MBA student looking to focus on finance, we do have a finance concentration, and finance has typically, for the most part, been second in terms of most popular career outcome for our MBA students. So I'd say, yeah, definitely.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So yeah, I think that stands answered. Can business product management experience at a top company qualify for the 1-year MBA program, even if the
So
candidate has no prior MBA degree?
yeah, so you don't need a prior MBA degree for the
Yes.
1-year MBA, but you will need a master's in management or equivalent. Um, you would need to then have, I think it's at least 3 years of experience following your master's in management. So if it's been in business, if it's been in project management, absolutely, we're going to be quite similar to the full-time MBA in that sense, that will look at people from different
Different
backgrounds.
backgrounds.
But yeah, just a reminder, you need to have that prerequisite for the 1-year MBA.
Great. So while we've answered the GMAT averages, could you give some insights on GRE
Ah.
scores?
Yeah, apologies. Usually I've popped that in my slides and I've forgotten to do that today. Roughly our GMAT average in the past has been roughly equivalent to 163 to 164 in both the verbal and the quantitative sections. So hopefully that works out for you. Don't worry if you're maybe a little bit higher in one of the sections, maybe a little bit lower. Again, it fits into that holistic review process that we have.
Right. This is slightly of a longish question, but what I get out of it is that my CGPA is 5.8 on 10, and I have 5 years of experience in public sector bank as officer. So where do you think that my chances are in terms of getting an admit at LPS? He's saying that I'm
Yeah, I
confident
mean,
of a GMAT focus score of 795.
sure. I mean, it's really hard for me to comment on chances of admissions. I don't have a full application in front of
Yes.
me, and that's again, I'll point back to my slide about very holistic review process. I don't have all the details. I'd say if you're somebody, maybe to answer it from a slightly different perspective, I'd say if you're somebody who perhaps is not super happy with your previous GPA,
Yeah.
we get that quite a lot. I think going to university is a pretty big deal, whether that's in your home country or elsewhere. It's a very different learning style, and we know that some people kind of struggle with that. The admissions committee are all human. We're not using AI yet, so we're all human beings. We understand that life happens, that there's bumps in the road. So I mean, this person is quite right in terms of thinking about perhaps using GMAT as a way to indicate what your
Yes.
potential is right now. That's a good way of looking at it, I think.
Amazing. And on this question on AI, how is the
Yeah.
how is AI being looked at when used by candidates to frame their essays?
Yeah, I thought that might be a good segue
Yeah.
into a question. So our requirements are that if you are choosing to use AI for any part of your application, you must declare that you have used it in some way or another. My view in terms of the essays, I know I've been asked that before, can I use AI in my essays? Again, you'd have to make sure you reference it and that you've used it. But I go back to what I said initially about the essays being about that authentic voice. do really consider if using generative AI is using your authentic voice. It's what, you know, it's what really makes people stand out when they've written it from the heart and they've been transparent and they've been open. So I do really ask you to consider that. I'm not saying don't use it, but I am saying really consider kind of what the purpose of using it would be.
Right. And reference it somewhere in the application that you've used AI, could be in the
Yeah,
essays.
so yeah, reference it as part of the essays, so a line at the bottom. I've seen a couple of people, I have seen applications with it, I'll say that.
Ah,
People who just say, I have used generative AI for this purpose. Yeah.
right. Great. Is it okay to finish the credits in 15 months and use the remaining 6 months for useful internships and graduate after 6 months?
So essentially what would happen is if you finish in 15 months, that would be kind of it. You would not be able to remain on a student visa. So that's really
Oh,
important for me to say, because you have technically finished. So you would opt to go into maybe the graduate route visa at that point, which would mean kind of working. It could mean that you work internships during that period. That's okay. But you would not be on a student visa anymore. So I think it's quite clear for me to say that. All the MBA students, we don't call it graduation, we call it congregation, and that is in July every year. So if you finish in 15 months, you do have a little bit of a wait before you actually don the cap and gown, as we say. So yeah, just to make that clear, in terms of
right.
being on what visa you would be on.
So there's a question connected to this. Can you please detail the
Mm-hmm.
difference between 15, 18, and 21-month
Yeah,
program? What
yeah.
programs, electives will we be missing out on?
Yeah, so the program's the same regardless of which exit point you choose. So you will have the same amount of graduating credits that you need to fulfill. It just requires a lot of very clever timetable management to finish early. So as I mentioned, you can do up to 5 electives in the first year. Those finishing in 15 months would need to do all of those. Makes your first year a little bit more intense. And like I said, it would limit which global experience you could do. So I'll just give you an example because I know it runs quite late in the year. Our global experience to Stockholm, that runs in June. So if you're looking at a 15-month exit, you would not be able to go to Stockholm on your global experience. Likewise with the international exchange programs, very unlikely that you would get any kind of exchange. Particularly 15 months, it's pretty much impossible. 18 months, you might just get away with a half semester exchange. So and then maybe to just touch on the question was about which electives would you miss out on. That's the other key piece, is electives run at different points of the year. So unfortunately, I don't have them kind of loaded into my brain which ones run when. There's so many of them. But it might mean that if there's a particular elective that you really, really want to do, that's a non-negotiable if you don't, it might impact where you exit. A lot of our more popular electives have multiple iterations that they run, so that at least that's a good sign. But yes, it could limit. If there was a particular elective you wanted to do, that could limit when you finish.
Right. Do MBA students have a chance to attend classes at the Dubai campus?
Yes. Yep. So Dubai campus is primarily for the executive MBA Dubai, but actually we do run a block week at our Dubai campus. So yes, MBA students are eligible to do that.
Great. From a diversity perspective, how does an architect fit in with the class? What are the specific
Oh,
quant requirements?
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, a great question. And maybe I'll answer it a little bit more from the quote unquote non-traditional backgrounds. I think it's really important to note that even if you're, not in those kind of business typical backgrounds, there is still a lot of what's the word, contributions you can make.
yes.
So architects, even though you're fairly, I guess, kind of design heavy, you're still going to be working in a team, you're still going to have clients, and that's really no different to somebody who's working in consulting and they have teams and they have projects that they have to deliver on. So it's really worth flipping it like that and understanding, where do my business skills come from if they're not coming from a quote unquote typical business background. If your work is all about collaboration, all about teams, maybe you're leading on projects, and those are all really, really good things to put in.
And any specific quant requirements that he should be?
So yes, we don't set any particular kind of minimum quant requirements. I'd say if you're a bit worried about quant requirements, I've seen some candidates go away and do quant courses in addition to GMAT GRE. We don't set that as a necessity. We kind of feel like our pre-courses are really good at getting everyone up and running for the program. But MBA math is one that I see quite a lot. So it's up to you in terms of that one. But like I said, when it came to kind of GMAT GRE, even the quant and verbal score, that as an individual piece is not going to rule anybody out. So there's definitely kind of prep courses and all of that stuff you can kind of take if you are a bit worried about it.
So I'll just change a few gears and talk a little bit about scholarships. How likely are scholarships available for Indian students? And also, are there ways in which students can earn, like be a TA to support their tuitions?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of scholarships, I can't comment on kind of how likely awarding is. It's very similar to commenting on chances of acceptance. I don't have a full application in front of me. But in terms of scholarships, the majority of our scholarships are merit-based. So it's based on the merits of the application that you provide to LBS. So with that piece that I was talking about that self-reflection, preparing, understanding how much time it's going to need for preparing your application, you do want to make sure it's the strongest it can be, particularly if you are somebody who's considering scholarships as a way of funding. So we have scholarships based around different metrics. So whether that is nationality, gender, sector that you work in, but we do have some more general awards as well. But really what I would suggest is, make sure your application is the highest quality it can be. You've drafted, redrafted those essays, used your authentic voice, all of that kind of stuff. And then I'd say in terms of kind of as a funding question overall, I think I do get that quite a lot, is how are students kind of managing the funding. We advise it being from multiple different sources. So whether it is perhaps your own savings, if you're somebody who's not transitioning careers, company sponsorship could be an option. So always worth having that conversation. But I'd say, even on the program, there are earning opportunities. So I mentioned that a lot of students do part-time internships, particularly in the second year. A lot of those are paid. So there is kind of some opportunity to reclaim perhaps some of the living costs and things like that. So hopefully that helps with that one.
Yes. Could you elaborate a little bit more about the culture at LBS?
Yeah, sure. What should I say? We're very collaborative. The students are there's always that level of support that I don't think I've necessarily, felt from my own education, but also seen perhaps at other schools. It is, there's always examples every year of students tutoring others, in accounting always seems to be the one. Accounting seems to be the one that needs the most tutoring. People working on the same case studies for job interviews, even though they're going for the same one. So there's, very much that collaborative spirit, that supportive spirit, and just really engaged. There is, I mentioned there's never a shortage of anything to do. There's always an event. There's always something going on campus. Even on the walk between our two buildings, you'll always bump into somebody that you know. It's very much a community, and we're very driven by that in particular.
Great. Are there any healthcare professionals doing MBA from the LBS?
Yeah, absolutely. We have doctors on the program every year, people who are perhaps working in the more kind of business side of healthcare, whether that's strategy. I've seen people in the med tech industry, medical devices. Again, I hark back to that question that the architect asked. Healthcare is still a business. There's still a lot of things that you do within healthcare that will provide you with skills that can contribute to an LBS class. So yeah, I've seen former medical doctors as I mentioned. But yeah, absolutely. Maybe just to touch, we have a really great healthcare club at LBS. So if you're
Yes.
either coming from healthcare or wanting to move into healthcare, they run a bunch of events. They have the healthcare conference every year. We also have a managing healthcare elective. So yeah, lots going on in terms of the healthcare space, whether you're joining it or wanting to go into it.
Right. How are reapplicants looked at, Christine, and what should they be doing differently?
Yeah, for sure. So first and foremost, we do welcome reapplicants. So if you have applied and been unsuccessful in the past, don't let that put you off applying again. Typically, what we do say for people reapplying, you want to make sure that there's differences between your initial application and your reapplication. So some examples of this, whether it is increased responsibility at work, and that can be demonstrated by a formal promotion, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Maybe you've taken a steer on leading a few more projects at work. That's a really good indicator of that kind of professional growth. Perhaps you have taken on a little bit more of personal growth, done extracurriculars, mentoring, volunteering opportunities. It could be that you've gone away and improved a test score. That could be a really good indicator. You've taken some of those quant prep courses that we've spoken about already on this call. So I think there's a whole bunch that people could show their growth, but that's really the important part, is understanding what has this candidate done between the applications they've submitted. How have they grown? How have they developed?
Right. And what common mistakes do you see Indian applicants making in their application?
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on too specifically on
Yeah.
particular nationalities. I've read so many applications in my time. I think maybe some common mistakes I have seen. I would say people maybe not necessarily demonstrating the research that they've done. So we obviously have a pretty good indicator that you're interested in LBS by submitting an application, but business school is a little bit like a two-way street. It is what you're going to gain from the program, but also we want to know how you're going to contribute back to the community and as a student. So do tell us about the people that you've spoken to, the research that you've done. Tell us about what classes you want to join, what clubs you'd really like to be involved in. Is there a particular event at LBS that stands out to you? So I think that's really important, is don't underestimate kind of putting in those little research pieces that you've done. And I'd say really the next bit, kind of a common mistake I've seen is a bit more of like a lack of proofreading and a lack of editing. So do make sure that you're checking your spelling, checking your grammar. If you have skipped questions and you want to come back to them, do make sure you go back to them, check every single step of the application, because like I said, applying to business school is a really big investment. You want to put your best foot forward. So do make sure you're doing that and really proofreading, tailoring your essays to us, checking all the spelling, grammar, all of that kind of stuff.
Right. So, Christine, it's been amazing to have you today, and thank you so much for sharing great insights about the school. It's definitely, I'm sure that people who have attended know more about LBS, what to do, what not to do, and things to avoid. And I'm glad that you took out the time to do this with us. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. No worries. I've just popped our general MBA email address in the chat
Yes.
box. So if you did have any questions, just let me and my team know. We monitor that inbox there. And apologies we didn't get through them all today.
Right, great. Okay, and we'll also be sharing the presentation that you showed us with all our
Mhm.
attendees. And if there are any follow-up questions, they can come back to us and
Yeah,
we'll have it addressed
sounds
via